Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Hi, I am great. Thank you so much for having me, Eric.
So, as I often say to the listeners, I start talking to my guests in advance of us actually having the episode, and then I stop abruptly
Yes.
in the conversation because I think to myself, the listeners might enjoy hearing this too. And
Yeah.
as I'm asking questions about you, because you and I haven't talked before, the listeners, they can get to know you too by hearing your answers. So basically, we were just talking about where you're from. You're in central Illinois.
Yep.
And I prefaced my question with, this is a stupid one, but I asked the relative positioning of Lisa to Chicago, and I imagine that there's some West Coasters or Southerners who probably don't know that either. But
Yeah.
Chicago's in the northern part of Illinois. Lisa's in the middle part of Illinois. And so she's about halfway between Chicago and St. Louis. Is that
Yep.
right?
That's correct.
There you go.
That's where I'm located. I grew up
That-
in the suburbs of Chicago. So most people outside of Illinois, it's funny when you get into Illinois, they think that like Chicago is like the oddball out. Like they don't like the city folk up there. But everywhere else in the country just thinks that Illinois is Chicago, but it's actually
Right.
a very small part of it. Yeah.
Very interesting. All right. So what does central Illinois look like when you drive down the street, or at least, out of your town, maybe a little bit? Is it, you were
lot
saying
of
cornfields.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of cornfields here. There's really a lot of flat land. There was a moment, actually, right before we were talking before we hit record, Eric and I have been trying to do this podcast for months now. There was a moment that my family and I was thinking about making a move out west, more towards like the Phoenix area. And that is one thing that sure is charming to me out west is just the elevation, seeing some like scenery, the mountains, things like that, because it is just flat green. Right now it's green because it's summertime, so that's pretty great. In January, when it's gray and it's flat and that can be a little bit depressing, but yeah, it's just green cornfields as far as your eye can see.
And there's something nice about that. I mean, it gets tiring seeing the beautiful green mountains all around and the ocean.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah. The snow caps over here, the beach over here. Yeah, I'm sure that is tiring.
So I have scars from listening to my dad's stories of having to go to college in South Bend, Indiana, and how bad the weather was. And Lisa confirmed that the seasons are very similar between Indiana, which is right next to Illinois.
Correct.
So and I just remembered, I went and visited, my brother also went to school there. I went and visited over a weekend, and it was subjected to a football game. And this is Notre Dame, so they have a big football program there with a lot of, diehard fans, of which I am not one. And it was one of the worst. I think I left as quickly as I could leave. I was young. I was probably 16, but the wind was straight from hell.
Yeah.
The snow was falling sideways. All the people around me, all the students were shirtless, and they had things written on their chests and stuff, and which I didn't understand because I don't watch any of the football there. And they were all fanatical about it. And I thought to myself, there is no way in hell that I'm going to college here.
Yeah. Fair. That's totally
Yeah.
fair. No, the winters are very rough. The older I get, the more I wonder. I think I will eventually one day maybe be a snowbird. I don't know if I can leave for good. We've tried moving away and we ended up back here where family is. So if only I could pick up everybody in my circle and go somewhere else. I think that's probably every Midwesterner's issue. But yeah, the winters are very tough. But right now it is August 1st when we're recording this, and it is beautiful outside. It's a little hot and humid, but I am spending every morning out on my patio watching the sunrise. The weather is beautiful right now, so I will enjoy it while I have it.
Nice. And that's part of what makes it great, having seasons. Is
it
the
makes you appreciate
appreciation.
it a lot more. It does.
100%. Okay, so let's get down to business. You are a hairstylist. You're, like we said, Central Illinois, and you're the founder of Stylist Soul Tribe.
Correct.
And you like building connections and sisterhood inside the industry through Stylist Soul Tribe. So, so let's start with. Well, you already told us where you're from, but how did you make your way into the hair industry in the first place?
Yeah. So I went to cosmetology school through my high school. There was a program through my high school that they offered that. And
In
when
the
I was
suburbs of Chicago.
Yep, in the suburbs of Chicago, so about 45 minutes outside of the city is where I grew up. And I was just, I don't know, when I signed up, I was probably 16 or 17. And it's so funny looking back. I was so over traditional school. And I think back, I'm like, girlfriend, just go sit in math class. Why were you so dying to get out of there? But I just had,
math
you know,
class sucks.
I
That's
know,
why.
senioritis. I was so over traditional schooling. I never went to school. My boyfriend, who's now my husband, was older than me at the time. I was just like, forget this. I'm done. Whatever I need to do to get out of here as fast as I can, I want to do. I just knew it wasn't for me. And there was a program. There was a lot of different options, but the cosmetology one sounded a little bit enticing. I had a few friends that were doing it. So honestly, it wasn't like since I was young, I knew I wanted to do hair. It wasn't anything like that. It was more just this seems like it doesn't suck quite as bad as sitting inside of traditional school. So I did that through my high school. So I started the summer before my senior year. I finished the summer after. And then even still, I don't think I was still like, boom, this is the space for me. It took me many years to really find my way in the industry and be like, oh no, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. So there was many years of, I just worked in some chain salons. I flip-flopped, salons a little bit. There was also a lot of personal things going on. And my husband was, traveling for getting his career started for a while. So I'd do hair a little bit, but I didn't take it super serious. And I mean, based on statistics, I think there's probably a lot of people in our industry that don't take it super serious. And then I would say it was probably 2016. And so I graduated in 2011. So it was just a few years after, maybe 5 years into my career. Nothing was really feeling like home quite yet. And then we bought a home somewhere and we were like, okay, we're staying put here. And it was the rise of Instagram. I was just starting to see that people could make a decent career out of this. And I just remember having this thought of I wonder what would happen if I just really tried to make something work with this, because I just didn't for years and years. And
but what were you doing? So for those 5 years that you're talking about, you're behind the chair.
On and off, yeah. So I started at a Fantastic Sam's. Do you know what that is? It's a chain salon. Started there. We moved to Florida while my husband welded in a shipyard. I worked at a random salon in a mall there. We moved back to Illinois after bouncing around a little bit. I also had my daughter very young. I became a mom at 20, so I had a young family. My husband was getting started in his career.
Right.
And then finally we decided to stay put in Lincoln, Illinois, which is no longer where I live, but close around there. And I was working at a Smart Style inside of Walmart. That is where I was working when I was like, what would happen if I took this serious? What would this be like?
I see. Okay, so that's very interesting, and I there's plenty of this story in the industry where you're not sure, somebody's not sure. There's life things that are happening to maybe make it really hard to focus on your career. Mm-hmm. So okay, but you were hanging around and you still were touching heads. And maybe not in the most glamorous places, but there's nothing wrong with that. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember when I moved to this small town, I didn't really know anybody. And when I moved to that town, I tried going into some of the more what seemed like nicer salons. And they were like, oh, do you have a clientele? We're rental only if you don't have a clientele. No, we don't have a spot for you. So Smart Style is where I ended up. And obviously there was a lot of walk-in haircuts. And I was probably there on and off for 2 years maybe. I had my son, I took a maternity leave, came back, and it was around 2016 is when I was like, I'm going to try to make something of this. I'm going to try to work on it. I'm going to promote myself. I'm going to see what I can do. And I'm pretty sure Britt Seva. I think you've done podcast episodes with her. I'm one of her founding Thrivers people, one of the real OGs. And honestly, I found a program and I went so hard and just marketed the hell out of myself in this little tiny town. And it took almost no time at all, of just the tiniest bit of effort and intention. And I started really growing a clientele. And then quickly I was like, okay, can I leave Walmart and continue to do this? And turns out I could. And so I rented a studio.
Give us some details on how much time? Almost no time at all. What is this like? It's not 3 days, but was it 3 months?
Maybe 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I got to the point where it was like, okay, I am fully booked out at least for 6 weeks. So like if I leave this salon and go do my own thing, and I mean in central Illinois, rent is cheap. Now I obviously talk to stylists all over the US and beyond, and like rent is cheap in central Illinois, but I remember being so scared to have to pay a rental payment of just like, what if I can't do it? Like I was so used to just a paycheck coming in, even though it was nothing back then, but I was so afraid to take that leap. But so I was like, I need to have some people that are my clients, that I know that I can do this. And so, yeah, probably 6 months, honestly. And I just remember Googling booth rental salon in central Illinois or in Lincoln, Illinois. And the space that I still do rent a suite at a couple days a week, because my best friend now, I have met her and we've become best friends, owns it. And I love to keep my hands in hair still.
Awesome.
It popped up and it was like, here's this place. It was right down the road from my house. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And so then that was in 2016. And so I would say for probably 2 years and a little bit beyond, but Soul Tribe started in 2018. And that's kind of where my attention shifted a little bit. But for 2 solid years, I went super duper duper hard in my business. And I went from working, I don't know, probably 5, 6, 7 days a week sometimes, to raising my prices, to niching down my schedule, to niching down my clientele, to just building like the most beautiful business ever. And all that during that time, I was also really active on Instagram, on YouTube, on social media, just kind of like sharing. I was on Brit's podcast back then, and I started to gain like a small following of hairstylists, more so than I mean, I had a booming business, but I realized then that it was exciting growing my business, but I was like, I don't really want to open a salon right now. And I was starting to get that itch of like something more. Like I kind of felt like I hit, okay, I did it. Now what? Like I keep raising my prices, but like, what's my next thing? And I loved at that time discussing business with other beauty pros, like way more than I loved doing clients' hair. And, I was like super into like listening to podcasts and just learning and reading books. And I was listening to podcasts and stuff at the time, and I'd hear all these like big name authors, speakers, educators, in our industry and beyond, that would talk about how they're in these masterminds and like they go to these mastermind events and they like do all these cool things. And I was like, well, I want that. Like, and to get into these masterminds, you have to like have $1 million online program or be a best-selling author or something like that. And I was like, well, why doesn't that just like exist for us? Like, I want to have those conversations regularly about, this thing that came up with my client. How do I troubleshoot it? Or this new direction I want to go with my business or something like that. And so I just put out a post on Instagram back in 2018, November of 2018. I was just like, I want to start a mastermind. If I could get just like 5 other stylists that wanted to do this with me, we could meet regularly, we could hold each other accountable, we could dream big, blah, 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 blah. And I got like 15 people interested in it off the bat. And then from 2018 to probably, what are we in 2024 now? I guess probably COVID was a big turning point where it kind of became more my full-time gig is now Stylist, Soul Tribe, and it has been for years now. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so, but you still work on a few clients, I guess, a couple times.
I do. I just can't give it up. My rent, like I said, my rent is so cheap, and I get paid to hang out with my best friend 2 days a week. And but like today's a Thursday. Typically, I'm in the salon Thursday. I had today marked off because I knew we were doing this, and I didn't feel like driving out of town. So I am still there a couple days a week, but it has definitely dwindled quite a bit. But I just can't let it go yet. I don't like sitting at my computer 5 days a week.
Well, you kind of have the luxury of choosing the clients that you want to spend time with, right? And charging them enough money so it makes sense for you, and the clients are willing to pay it, and it's just a nice place to be in your career.
Yeah,
okay, but what all the listeners are dying to hear is, how did you get there, right? From Smart Style was the Walmart one? Okay. How did you get from Smart Style to, well, let's start back at Smart Style, when you started getting serious, as you say, with your career, and then you went to the studio and were very successful. Tell us about those steps.
Oh my goodness, I did so many things. I mean, it was just, I feel like I would wake up every single morning and say, what's one little needle mover I can do today? And so I, created a website, created all the profiles, created all the marketing flows, all the things like that. And then I was networking like crazy. I was getting to know other business owners in the area. I was doing giveaways. I was doing contests. I mean, I was just going hard at it, but it was like my hobby at the time. It was so exciting. It was so fun. And like I said, it was 2016. So it was like the rise of Instagram when all these people were kind of sharing, and it was just so exciting and so fun back then. So, I mean, a lot of things, referral programs, super consistent on all the platforms, all the social media platforms, lots of word of mouth. Yeah.
All the little things.
All the things.
And it worked.
Yeah. It did.
And the more you did it and the more it worked, the more exciting it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't really seem like work. I love how you identified it as a hobby.
It really was,
Hobby is something we do and typically don't get paid. In this case, you are getting paid, so you were getting the benefit of it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so then going back to the Stylist Soul Tribe beginnings.
Yeah.
You started with a small group of people. And so tell us about what it is now. It takes up most of your time now. And so tell us how you're spending your time and what you're bringing to your community there.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, there was not much to it. It was just a random idea that I figured I'd run with and give it a try. So it started with a very small group of people, some that are still in, which it's really cool. And then shortly after we were meeting regularly monthly, we were like, how cool would it be if we could get together in person? I read a statistic somewhere as I was, deep diving into growing this, that masterminds have a 90-something% chance of lasting if they meet in person within the first year. And I totally would agree with that now with all the, education that I've done. So I held my first retreat back in 2019, the summer of 2019 in Chicago, and there was 10 people there. And that was a really beautiful experience. And I am so grateful to that core group of people because they really shaped it, and it continued to grow from there. And I just kept launching and refining and changing. And I wish I could remember what came in what order. But at this point now, I have roughly, I like to keep it around 100 people. I have realized that my brain tends to forget what is going on in people's world once I've gotten to that point and been I'll get on a call with a tribe and they'll be like, oh yeah, remember last month this happened? I'm like, okay, no, I don't. But so that is kind of my sweet spot. So I have 20 tribes of 5 people each. That's kind of the beautiful, I call it my massive jigsaw puzzle all the time.
Okay. And hold on.
Yep.
Explain the separation, not separate, but explain the categorization into the 20 tribes. Are these people who join at the same time?
Yeah.
What?
That's a good question. So some of the tribes are, they did join at the same time, but now there's people who have been in Soul Tribe for 5 years now, and tribes have switched. People have come and gone. They've craved something new. They've gone from being stylists to salon owners. They've gone from being stylists to educators. Their life changes. They need different things. So I just kind of have the bird's eye view of everything. And when we just wrapped up a launch, so we're bringing in new members right now. And so we onboard all the new members. I have a one-on-one onboarding session with everyone. And then based on their goals, their personality type, what accountability means to them, what they're looking for, I then group them. And sometimes it's brand new people that just joined with them, but sometimes it's people who've been in for a while who need a little bit of shakeup, or I realize, this tribe is, getting less active. So let's just kind of shake it up and move everybody around. So some of them have been together for a very long time. Some of them, it's always kind of evolving and moving and shaking. That's why I call it a massive jigsaw puzzle, because when I sit down to do the tribes with my assistant, it is like putting a massive jigsaw puzzle together, but it's really beautiful.
Okay, so keep explaining. So you have these 20 tribes, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so each tribe meets on a monthly basis, and the call day and time never changes. So, for example, it'd be the first Monday of the month at 9 a.m. That's always when that tribe will meet. And consistency, I think, is really important for masterminds. I also think having someone kind of facilitating is very important. I think a lot of stylists can relate, and I'm, curious to hear if you can relate to this as well, where there's people in your circle, you network network and you're like, oh, I really could learn so much from these people if we got together regularly. You start for a little bit, one person cancels, it kind of fizzles away. So we meet monthly, call day and time never changes. And basically on those monthly calls, it's just kind of like an accountability check. I take notes from the last time we met, and they have homework that they assign themselves. So it's basically like you said, you were going to, print out a QR code to run a Google My Business review giveaway for this month. How's that going? Or you were going to let this one client go that's really toxic and isn't good for you or your mental health, or you were going to cut weekends, or whatever their homework was. We check in on that. And there's something really powerful about knowing you say something out loud. You have a month to work on it. 2 weeks come around, the post goes out, it reminds you what your homework is. And then you have to get back and look at all those people again and either say like, yep, it got done, or like this came up, or can you guys help me troubleshoot this? Can you help me work through this? So those are the monthly calls. That's like the meat of the program. We use Marco Polo. I don't know if you're familiar with that app. Have you ever heard of it? It's like a video. It's almost like Snapchat meets like a group text message. So it's like video messages. And they talk in their tribe between monthly calls on Marco Polo. So like they'll say, oh guys, I told you I was gonna, let my renter go or something like that. And then they have their meeting with the renter. It was a shit show. They get in, the tribe supports them. And that, like I said, that's kind of the meat of it. But now so that you each have Soul Tribe 1 through Soul Tribe 20. Those all exist. But then there's the big group is everybody as a whole. And there's also a Marco Polo group for that. There's a Marco Polo group just for salon owners. There's a Marco Polo group just for educators. There's a Marco Polo group for extension specialists. Like it's really become this like ecosystem. It's really insane. And that's why I started my podcast back in November, because obviously I have my own like coaching principles. I've grown a business. I've learned quite a bit through the years, but I do not know everything, and I don't claim to know everything. And I really think there's just something magical and special and important in creating a space where a lot of minds can come together. And I almost felt like guilty for a while there of just like, these conversations are so powerful and good and amazing, and like nobody's even seeing them because it's just on this Marco Polo thread, and then before you know it, you watch it and the video's gone. And I was just like, I need to like share this with the industry on a greater level. And that's what started my podcast, which is called Stylists Soul Tribe Conversations. I'm just taking really good stuff that's happening behind the scenes inside of this mastermind and kind of bringing it to light for the rest of the industry.
So you're taking clips of the videos and you're putting them together to make a podcast?
Not necessarily, no, because a lot of things are private too.
Right.
Like it is a very vulnerable, like deep group. So no, not so much that, but to the point where like a conversation will take place inside of Soul Tribe that was really powerful and really impactful. And like, it will keep me up at night. I'll be thinking about it. I'll make a podcast episode about that. I won't share anybody's names. I won't show their face. But just, there's too much goodness. My business behind the chair is, like I said, there's not even much to it yet, but there's so much value happening inside from all of these different minds and all of these different people that I'm just trying to share it with others and continue to connect others.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a business. How do you charge for it? What does one pay to be part of it?
Yeah, I have three payment options. You can be monthly for $99 a month. You can be quarterly for $279 a quarter, or you can be annual for $999 a year. So you save a little bit of money the longer time you commit to. Like I said, there's people that have been in it for over 5 years now, so they just stay on auto renewal, and it's just here while it serves you. If you're, stepping away for a little while, or you can't be present for a little while, or you're overwhelmed, there's plenty of people that, step out for a little bit and come back in. And that's kind of how we have it going.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious of the pitfalls of such a situation. And, I like to sometimes educate through the negative examples, not just positive examples, because also the negative examples are entertaining. Mm-hmm. Do you have any negative examples of like how someone or the system could could like fall apart a little bit when a certain kind of someone comes into
that's
a
a really
situation?
good question. Nobody's ever asked me that straight up, but definitely it happens behind the scenes. So a few episodes back, you had Leisha Thompson on. She is actually my assistant. So she has been in Soul Tribe for years. She came to me. She's like, I'd love to kind of like help you out behind the scenes. She has a traveling hairstylist now. And I remember when she presented that like job pitch to me, I was like, are you ready for your Soul Tribe experience to lose its magic? Because when you step behind the curtain, obviously there's a lot more stress. There's a lot more things happening like that. So that's a really funny question for you to ask. I mean, basically, and I'm so passionate about it, that's why it works this way, but the business that I have built is based on 100 different people's personalities and hoping that connections work. And there's lots of online memberships that go with courses or things like that will like try out accountability pods where it's just like a random list will put groups of 5 together. And like I said, those typically fizzle away. It's very rare for you to find good connections, but I am deep in this on a daily basis, making sure that people are getting the support they need. So yeah, I mean, it happens. There's an option at any time for people to request a Soul Tribe switch if they're just feeling like the group that they're with right now is not providing what it used to, or if it's, they've known each other for years now, they're not really pushing each other like they used to because they've gotten into this like comfortable place. So yeah, there definitely is some things like that I just have to. But I'm very committed to turning all the dials and keeping things flowing smoothly. But there's plenty of things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good that you're there to prevent maybe a destructive person from getting in there.
For sure.
While it can absolutely be constructive and probably is 98% of the conversations, I totally am with you that I could see how they could be so awesome for the participants, but now and then you get somebody in there who's a bit of a variable, let's call it. Yeah, and that constructive conversation can turn destructive. Have you ever had to kick anybody out?
Yeah, without like using those words, but yeah, I mean, there's been some situations where I've just thought that it would be better if we parted ways. There's been a couple of those. Like
the link doesn't work anymore, right? Like,
no, I'm more transparent than that. I really believe in like firing clients and like having boundaries and letting go of people that aren't good for you. So no, there has been a couple unfortunate situations that have happened like that. But I should also say it's by application only. And the application is kind of intense. So if somebody takes the time to fill that out and like we ask really deep questions of like,
how many pages?
I mean, it's a job
or
form,
questions.
So I don't know. I honestly don't know off the top of my head, but it keeps growing and growing. I mean, you can tell when people take some time, and usually people do, and they'll give some pretty long answers. There's an option to submit a video at the end. So having it be application only, and then I onboard everybody. I do get a pretty good feel for people, but I definitely do group, especially, I mean, post 2020, post COVID, we've become divided, and I'm a very neutral person, but I can see even just from people's posts on social media, probably these two shouldn't be in the same room together, so I'm just very thoughtful of that, but I think it helps that I'm very kind of middle ground, love everybody.
Diplomatic.
And can understand where I'm very empathetic. I know whatever anyone's dealing with, there's been a story that has brought them to that, so yeah.
Sure. And I mean, you have the goal firmly in your mind. You're focused on making it a constructive conversation. You're not there to talk politics.
Yeah, I have some guidelines when people join. Like, that's one of the first questions that asks them. Like, gossip is a zero tolerance policy. Like, I always say Soul Tribe is a tool. It's not a task. So, like, I set the expectations very clear of what it is that people are going in for. And I'm kind of woo-woo. I also just really think that I attract really, really amazing people to my world. Like, I just don't know how else it would work so well other than that being the case. And I've said for years, they say find your why or whatever, your tagline or whatever. And I really, for years, it became clear to me, I am here to create connections and sisterhood inside the industry. So outside of everything else, whether people come, whether people go, whether whatever happens, as long as I'm creating connections and sisterhood inside the industry, like that, my job here is done. So if people are in Soul Tribe for a year and then they leave and they stay connected with their tribe for years, and I see that like they're celebrating one of them opening their salon later, like that, it literally feels like my life purpose, like happening. So I'm just trying to do whatever I can to help be part of that.
I'm with you. I imagine you have guys too.
We
you say sisterhood.
Don't have any.
Not one.
No, I mean, I'd be open to it. I don't want to be like non-inclusive, but no, I don't think, I'm telling you, I just draw in a certain type of person. But we also do annual retreats, and I don't know that maybe I wouldn't let a cisgender straight man in. I don't know if that's bad to say, but like we have retreats where we're together in person, we're crying, it's deep, we do breath work together. I mean, it really is like a sacred space. I know, so I hate to say that. I don't mean to be not inclusive, but no, I don't think I've ever had any even apply, truthfully.
Huh. Well, I wonder that if it's because you've kind of branded it with the sisterhood thing, maybe the guy...
colors are pink and stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, well,
maybe.
There you go. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so, it's not just business stuff. It really is like personal and emotional. And there's a lot of mindset stuff that goes into it too, that I think that's what makes Soul Tribe different than a lot of other like online education platforms. Like we'll talk about those things obviously, but I think your business is a direct reflection of what's happening in your personal and inner world as well too. And until that's like healed and settled, I just think even if you are growing a really incredible business, it's probably not on the most solid foundation. So I really believe in like a holistic look at your life and your business together.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So since you're, I was going to say subject to so many of these conversations that would be a negative way to describe it. Mm-hmm. But since you're part of so many of these conversations and you're hearing about what's going on, tell us kind of, are there any themes generally, nothing specific, but any themes about what's going on in the industry, across the country?
Yeah. And they change all the time. But I just got wrapped up a resource fair. We do a vision casting workshop in January. In July, I do a resource fair every year. And that is almost none of me teaching, but I, again, get to hear all these incredible minds and all these incredible conversations. I also should mention inside of Stylist Soul Tribe, we do monthly hot seats inside the big group, and we do monthly master classes that are led by somebody inside of Stylist Soul Tribe. So like someone says, oh, I did this new thing and it worked really well in my business. I'm like, will you teach a master class on that next month? And they say yes. So like, for example, Jen Santos is teaching one next month. She's a salon owner. She has created a salon app for her staff. And I'm like, boom, teach a class on that, 20-minute class, teach all of us. So throughout the year, we have 12 master classes that go out every single month. And when it was coming time for the resource fair, I like to highlight Soul Tribe members during the resource fair. So this what felt relevant going into this summer's kind of launch schedule, we really dove deep into branding, nurturing, and marketing. Those were like the three things that we talked about. So in branding, we had, a couple people speaking about like brand voice, brand identity, things like that. Anna DeRay from Translating the Label should be another great one for you to have on the podcast. She spoke about, product ingredients and finding a product line that really is in alignment with your core values and your brand. The nurturing panel, I'm on the spot now. Who was in the nurturing panel? We had Afton, who has a boutique inside of her salon, and she hosts biannual, like twice a year, markets in her town. So she's like really networked with other businesses around her. So she just kind of shared that that's a way that she nurtures her clients. We had Paloma and Larry, who just kind of shared some things they do to nurture their clients, amenities, going above and beyond for their clients, and that really they've seen a lot of success with it. Like they have really impressive businesses, and so I kind of like to just highlight what's working for people. And then the marketing panel, we had Alana Zilkowski. She has Breeze Web Design. She builds websites for people in the salon industry. And then we also had Caitlin Granger, who talked about how to use ManyChat for your Instagram. And then Laurel talked about like optimizing your Instagram bio. So I'm just kind of like always, again, I selfishly get to be part of 20 of these calls a month. So I get to talk to 100 brilliant people a month that when I spot something that's working well, I'm just like, boom, share that, share that, share that. And then this like library grows and I'm like, this is so valuable. More people need to see it. And then based on that, like that was just this summer what felt really relevant for what people needed right now. Like here's what's working really, really well for some people. Let's share it with the industry. So we did that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I'm seeing is a fatigue with social media, especially when it comes to all the different platforms of social media. Obviously, TikTok is, almost fully mature now, I would say, from the standpoint of a platform. Everybody knows about it, and just about most people, below a certain, of a certain generation are on it. What are you advising to your people? I don't know if really that's what you do is advise, but what do you have to say about it?
I'm curious your thoughts on TikTok. It's funny to hear you say feels fully mature. I would say it's curious. You never know if something's actually at its prime because you don't know if it can continue going up. But it feels as a consumer like TikTok's at its prime and Instagram's on the downslope. Like just getting on it, it feels a little bit older. It feels a little bit mustier. I don't know.
What, Instagram?
So, yeah, I would say so. I mean, I'm still on it, but that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you can look at the data and the average age is higher. I'm 48, right? You're younger than I am, but the average age is higher. TikTok, it's lower. No surprises there. Yeah. I think the content that you see on both platforms reflects that. Yep. I said with TikTok, I said fully mature. Really, what I was talking to is just kind of its exposure. I think most of the younger generation is on it that is gonna be on it. Whereas a year and a half ago, I would say that it was still maturing.
It was budding. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. TikTok is advertising now, which is oftentimes an indication of a topping of it. Like if you think back to, I don't even know if you're old enough for this, but the MySpace days.
Yes, I had Xanga before I had MySpace, so yes.
No way, really?
Yeah.
So MySpace, if you remember, what a catastrophe that was when Fox bought it. Or News Corp. It might have been, Fox is owned by News Corp, so I don't know if News Corp or Fox bought it. One of them bought it. And they immediately put advertising on it, and the damn thing exploded within 6 months.
It died so fast.
Just like that. But they only spent $600 million on it, which was a huge price at the time. Now that's laughable. It's like that's what the investment bankers charge on the fees for one of these deals. But TikTok, it's worth $300 billion. It's advertising. It's got 15,000 employees or whatever. It's got all the mature problems of a platform.
Totally.
You got the U.S. government and other governments going after it, and all these kind of mature problems. And that's kind of why I say it's mature. It's being used for commercial purposes vastly, which is another indication of maturity. And Instagram. So you commented that it's kind of on the downslope. I don't know if it's on the downslope in terms of like metrics, like users, hours, things like that. I understand what you mean, probably in terms of just maybe the seeming popularity,
Well, and I think that coming back to our industry, I think that's where people are just feeling overwhelmed. Like back when I said I was, getting started on it, it was so new and exciting. And now at this point, I feel like a lot of stylists are just having a hard time, even if it's worked for them for years, doing the same thing again and again and again and again. And I think that's just where they start to get overwhelmed. So I don't know if I personally, from a consumer standpoint, I personally do enjoy being on TikTok more than being on Instagram. As a consumer, as a creator, I definitely would still say my people seem to be on Instagram. But I think that that's where the overwhelm is, though. Like, I don't know. I'm not hearing people personally right now saying they're getting new clients from TikTok. I don't think that's happening yet. Maybe if you're real big, in your area. But I wouldn't personally look on TikTok for a hairstylist. And I'm not hearing that. Yeah. I'm hearing that Google Business is working astronomically better than anything else, and it takes a fraction of the effort that Instagram takes. So like, I think that's where people's attention should be. One post a week, using keywords, that's all you need, and people are seeing and getting as many reviews as you can, and people are seeing a major uptick in new guest requests when they start doing that.
Definitely can't argue against the behemoth of search, Google. Google My Business. We've talked about it on the podcast. I think it's something that a lot of people who like to spend //waste a lot of time on Instagram and TikTok probably ignore. But it is probably the most powerful business tool out there. If somebody is searching for a hairstylist, not if somebody is pissing away an hour and a half before going to bed, but if somebody's looking for a beauty professional or a salon, they go to Google, and they spend 8 minutes, and they're going to find things in those 8 minutes, and you want to be one of the things that they find. Yep. So, and Google has gotten really good. Talk about mature. I mean, they've gotten very, very good at their listings and, sending information to people who are searching for specific things. So I'm glad you mentioned that. It can't really be mentioned enough, frankly, is Google My Business, because a lot of people aren't good at it. A lot of beauty professionals ignore it entirely.
And just SEO strategy as a whole, working that into your website, working that into even just like other platforms. It's so powerful to be featured on other blogs and things like that. I think SEO strategy completely is, doesn't seem as fun and exciting and confusing for people, so they let that go. But I know once people dial those in and put those into place, there is like tangible results very quickly.
100%. Not cheap to do, and it's SEO is a little bit of a science, and very frustratingly, Google, just similar to the algorithms of TikTok and Instagram, they change. Google changes the way that they do things, which means that it's something else that you have to do every once in a while, is have an eye on your SEO, the search engine optimization. But anyway, Google My Business, I think maybe at least just spending a little bit of time making sure your profile looks good on there, making sure your pictures look good on there. You've got, an accurate description. You have things as simple as, this is your accurate address. Yes. I mean, so many people don't even have that, right? But then again, as I say that, I also am drawn back into something that I've been saying for probably 7 years now, which is, please, guys, put your location on your Instagram profile. So many hairstylists still don't have their location. And I'm not saying specific. Ideally, you have your specific address.
Yeah, be a business profile and have your address. Yeah.
Many people don't even have San Diego, California on there.
Yeah.
And I think that hinders you. Okay. So if you could wave a wand and change anything about the industry at all right now, what would it be?
Let me think about that one.
You're the queen of the industry. No, I'm not. Stylist Soul Tribe queen.
Oh, goodness.
Lisa.
I don't know.
Here's your wand.
If I could wave a wand and change anything in the industry, I would change the minds of people who think that, or who have believed a story that they can't build the exact business that they want in this industry. This industry gives us so many opportunities. I mean, what I do now literally would make no sense to somebody 10 years ago if you explained, I'm going to go to beauty school and this is where I'm going to end up in 10 years. Like, that would make no sense to anybody. The revenue that I'm bringing in, how I'm spending my day to day would make no sense. And I truly believe that any hairstylist that gets clear on what it is that they want, gets very clear on their vision and what it is that they want, can genuinely work any schedule that they want with any clientele that they want to and earn incredible money with time, with intention. But eventually you can build that. And I just think that rumors of, or thought process of, you have to work nights and weekends, you have to be this starving artist, you have to, grind, or you can't ever raise your prices, or you have to bend over backwards for people. I just am positive that that's not true.
I'm such a huge believer in that too. I've seen it so many times over such a long period of time. The problem that I see is that people keep changing their minds. I want to do exception. I'm sorry. I want to do extensions. And then 4 weeks later, I hate extensions. I'm going to concentrate on balayage only. I'm only going to take balayage clients. And then 4 months later, it's like, I think I want to start incorporating nails and, just jumping from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. I see that a lot. And I think that hinders people significantly. What say you to something like that?
That's where I get really woo-woo. I get real woo-woo with that. And I just think that that's like your intuition telling you that something has to change and that you haven't found it yet, what it is for you. And while it's absolutely frustrating from a coach's perspective, watching somebody do that, like, girl, you haven't even given that time to get, any traction yet. I also know that when I had that like longing for something new, I think there's also something powerful in tasting a lot of things, but also get your expectations lined up properly and practice patience so that you can find what that is for you. And eventually, if you're really, what do they say, the lifelong student or whatever, if you just eventually cannot find it, I get real woo-woo with it. And I think that might be some like healing knocking at the door and some inner work that might need to take place if you have no idea what you want, nothing is working out, no patience to see anything all the way through. That's what I say.
I think you're 100% right there. And you're definitely the one with the credibility to say that. So, Lisa, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. You're Lisa Huff Hair on Instagram. You're Stylist Soul Tribe on Instagram.
Correct.
And listeners, check her out. She's got so much to offer.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on.